You all hear me? Raise your hands if you can see me, hear me. First, we'll begin with the opening prayers.
Rejave Nishi Ninde Gemban Sangye Jindoi Mide Bewai Droge Nanda Jinla Jebara Jo Simje Namye Samba Loye Jera Jeda Shejon De Monde Bai Chege Golo Gordo So 선비지 세계를 내고 이르시 동성한 선배소 이시게도 등담매도 투전을 아무로 자게 나 ring엄섬이 담배소 얘는 연락으로 좀 하죠. 대신 구신제부 된저바 용제라마 유바자라 시작하라 히르비고 예자바도 두신하고 예외대마군에서 그 유럽 잘라서 반대로 지상하를 근소하라마 감마 경우로그 예전에 시집에죠. 이놈은 좀 틀려고 이제 저번에 주주님 비즈니스잖아. 내주 이제 그변도 라메도 제 경우랑 저 시제스는 남자 담에 계속으로 건드려야 하는 거를 주주라는 놈이 거가 미규도 제셔라서 안데 반에서나 말은 뭐제 다그 저를 뱀에 되죠라 그런 식의 관에 있어서 고존도 예우로 자도 음 음. 음. 다 가는 문제야. 다 도마.
So first of all, I'd like to offer you all a warm greeting. So today is Chamgun Guru Vajradhara Taisuthu Rinpoche's birthday. And so we should all, first of all, and so we will all recite the long life prayer for Sutra Rinpoche written by the previous Trupin Dechen Rinpoche. We will recite that 3 times with the aspiration that he live for a long time, that he accomplish a vast activity just as he wishes. So today, as I mentioned the other day, I would like to begin by discussing in brief the dates of the 8 Gyalwang Karmapas, of the first 8 Gyalwang Karmapas in brief. So here, the dates I will be using today, if you're wondering what text I'm using as the basis for this, these dates come mainly come from a liberation story of the 7th Karmapa Chura Gyatso written by Goshri Palcha Tundrup, the first Gyatso Rinpoche. There are also chronologies of the Karma Kamsa written by many past Kagyu masters. For example, there is a chronology written by Pao Tsula Chengwa, and there's a monastery in Kurap called Kurap Gonsar Monastery, and the Kempo of that monastery, Kempo Tsini Palsang, wrote a chronology as well. This is during the time of the 9th Karmapa. But the one by Goshri Palcha Dundrup, the first Gyatso Rinpoche, is the earliest in terms of the chronology. And within that text, it gives a very complete presentation. So I'm going to use that one as the basis for my discussion. The text by Goshri Gyaltsep gives the dates of the births and deaths of the first 6 Karmapas and the birth date of the 7th. Now, there are 2 versions of this text. The first is within his liberation story, the 7th Karmapa, entitled The Liberation of Ranchung Kunchen Soke Doje Mipam Chugi Gyatso. And so in that, he added this as notes. And the second is what I am showing to all of you in these reproductions. This is a manuscript called the Dates of the Incarnations of the Karmapas, and it is a 3-page manuscript. And within this one, so both of these give the clans the places of their births, their birth date, their parents' names, and the year or the sign of their birth, the name that they're called by when they're young, the monastic name, their lifespan, and the year and date of their passing away for the first 6 Karmapas. It's very clearly presented here. So I've taken the dates of the incarnations of the Karmapas, and as well as the one that I mentioned before, the liberation of the notes in the liberation story of the 7th Karmapa. I've taken these as a basis and made a table. But in this table, when I made the table, I didn't put in the clans or the old place names. And the reason for this is that when you talk about clans, it's like one large clan has many different subdivisions. And because there's so many subdivisions, if I explain them all, it would be too complicated and you get headaches from it. So I haven't put them in. In particular, we do not make such a distinction between clans and castes. And so for these reasons, for the time being, I'm not going to speak about the clans and castes. And regarding the names of the birthplaces, if you want to search for them on the internet or on a map these days, in order to make it easier to find out, I've put down the modern place names. I have not put the old place names that are listed in the original manuscript. But I've added these new manuscripts. They're not in the original. So I've put them in a different color so that when you just immediately see them, you can understand that they are added or that they are new. Likewise, the way the names that are described in the text, and then there are different names that we normally use. And so in order to make it easy to understand, I've put the names in slightly different than in the manuscript, and I've also put them in a different color. So in general, if we want to know where the birthplaces of the Karmapas are these days and how far they are apart, what their current state is. A few years ago, I expressed my wish to a few Dharma friends in China, and they went to the actual places. And they did research and gained a good understanding and knowledge of the areas. And if we had any questions or doubts, we researched them in old histories and texts. And we were able to identify most of them. But there are still a few that probably need further research. So as I introduce or point out, tell you about these birthplaces today, I'm using the pictures that they took as they visited the sites and the information that they provided as the basis. And then in addition, I'm also using some old histories that I've read as my sources, and I will describe them in brief. So I'll speak at greater length about the, I'd like to speak at greater length about the life of Dusum Khenpa, the first Karmapa. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank all my Dharma friends who went to the birthplaces, the Karmapas, for their efforts and who helped me out. So thank you very much. So generally, before I explain the names, or before I explain the birthplaces of the different Karmapas, there's something I should explain. For example, the first Karmapa was born in the region of Trewo. Most of you probably know. It's from Trewo Kampa. The region of Trewo was the birthplace of the first Karmapa, the ninth Karmapa, the fourth Shamar Chenga Chudar, And so there's the place where one or two of the Shamar Rinpoches were born. Not only that, up through the time of the 10th Karmapa, there are many Kagyu lamas and monasteries in the region of Trewo. Also, there's a student of the 7th Karmapa named Chamo Goshi, who helped the teachings, the Karma Kagyus flourish greatly, both dharmically and politically. But later, after the time of the destruction by the Mongol Gushi Khan's armies, then only Bengan Monastery, Ridak Monastery, and Gosar Monastery, only these three remained among the Kansang monasteries. And otherwise, other than just the stories that they used to be there and their ruins, nothing is left of the others. For that reason, fewer and fewer people have taken less interest in the history associated with the Karma Kagyu. And now that several centuries have passed, people no longer know the differences between the various incarnations of the Karmapas and between the Karmapas and Sharmapas, and mix them all together into a single history when they tell the stories. And because of this, so there are several remaining oral histories. And if you look for sources for them, though, you can't really say that there's no source categorically. But there are many situations where it isn't exactly as it wasn't necessarily exactly as they are told. And so these are things that we need to understand and that we need to that we need to consider. And so when we're trying to identify the locations of historical events, it is important for us to pay respects to the personages and to continue to remember their histories and the actual traces of the actual signs of their deeds. And if there's just a different way explanation or a different way of expressing it, there's no point to debate about whether that is all right or not. And so what I am trying to explain today is in order that the histories become clear. And so that we have a little bit more interest in the history. I'm not saying that one is right or the other isn't. So now I'd like to tell the actual dates of their births. The first Karmapa, Dusum Khenpa, the birthplace of the first Karmapa, Dusum Khenpa, is this place. This is the actual place. And so this is the table that I have made. And if you look at the table, the name of the birthplace is in blue. And that is the current name. And so his father name is Gompa Dorjegun. And his mother is Latok Sangang. And his birth year is Male Iron Tiger in 1110. Before he was, his given name before he became a monk was Gepel. And his name after he took ordination was Chukidrapa. He lived to the age of 84. And so this is the Tibetan way of counting. It's not the in terms of the Western way. So in terms of for the Western way of counting, it would be 83. And he passed away on the first lunar month of the third day, the first lunar month of the female water ox here, or it could actually be the 11th month. Now, what it says in the actual text is What it says is that in the actual is that his birthplace is Ratak and Che. When you talk about Ratak and Che, so it says in the manuscript that Dusum Khenpa's birthplace is Ratak and Che. Che is spelled differently. Sometimes it's spelled with a ka, so Krewo. Often it's spelled with a Trew. But in modern times it is Che Ho. So in the old days they called it Che Wo. In these days, it is in the Kardze district. And so Ratak, there are different spelling. There's some spell it Ratak, so some spell it Ratzak, and others spell Ratak differently. So there are different spellings of it. But most of the Kagyu histories spell it as Ratak. And so now within this, it says that he was born in Che Ratak. But these days, people say that Dusum Khenpa is in Bochok. Bochok is a place. And they say that there are still some descendants of his family there. And there are many stories related to that, and also artifacts that they can show. And so for these reasons, most people take their explanation as for a given, or as the basis, and they say that Dusum Khenpa was born in Bochok. Also, in 2010, when we celebrated the 900th anniversary of Dusum Khenpa's birth, we wrote in the book and in the internet files that it was Bochok. But I often take interest in history. So most of the old histories and liberation story say he was born in Ratak and Che. I never saw that he was born in Bochok. So I had a bit of a doubt whether his actual birthday place was Bochok or not. But one good thing that happened is that a year or two ago, I received an old document. And when I received that and I read it, I was able to dispel all my doubts as to where Dusum Khenpa was born. And so this is the letter as I'm showing here. And so there's a little bit of a problem. I left out a punctuation mark when I did it in a hurry. And what this says is that this document was written by the 8th Karmapa Mikyo Dorje's personal physician and attendant, Gelong Shankarwa Jitme Ngaki Gyatso. So he's the author of this. The subject of this document is how the reincarnation of Mikyo Dorje, that is Wangchuk Dorje, and he was born at a place called Taksang near the foot of Mount Kowloon in Lower Che. So these days it's called Taksang Nang. So that is the 9th Karmapa's birthplace. And after the 9th Karmapa was born, they sent some attendants. The 5th Shamar, Kuncha Yenlak, sent Gelong Shankarwa, Gonchen Chungyo Kunga, and other monks for a total of 10, specifically from the encampment to offer him food, clothing, and so forth, and to take care of him. So they started in Utsang in central Tibet, and this document describes the regions along the way the monasteries and the history associated with them. They took notes of these until they achieved Lamaism. And so this is called the Vadris Splinter Travelogue. And so within this, it's descriptions of the places in Upper and Lower Tre and the monasteries that were there at that time, and the information related to the birthplace of Dusum Khenpo are all described very clearly. So I think this is a really great source for research into the history of Trewo, and especially the histories of Dusum Khenpo. So today I'm using this travelogue as the basis, and I've supplemented it with a few other old histories. And I thought I should give a brief introduction to Dusum Khenpo's birthplace. Now, this travelogue, the Vadris Splinter travelogue, describes the area of Trewo and of the area of Trewo and the area and the surrounding areas. And so it is written in verse, but that's not so easy to understand. So I've written it out in prose. And when the author arrived in Trewo, the first thing he saw, he says, was Treto Gangri Yukar, or the Yukar snow mountain in Upper Tre. So that's, and so that I'm showing a picture of a mountain that is the snow mountain Upper Tre. Now these days they no longer call it a snow mountain. They call it a rock mountain. So it's probably that the glaciers have melted and it's now all just a rock mountain. And so this is the first thing that he saw. Then he went to Chakrasamka, the estate of the Lord of Ling. Then he writes, I went to a place an hour or two ride away to where there's the Karmapas monastery called Guntra. Now I've put a map there. Now this map is in Chinese. Now you won't necessarily understand it all right now, but so if you had never been, I've never been there, so it doesn't necessarily come to, so I can't explain it too, so it doesn't so vivid to me, but basically, so there's the Karmapas monastery called Guntra, and there was a hoofprint there left by Chudok Kyasu's horse named Zamling Norber. And so people put a horse footprint, but for the horse, so horses have hooves, not feet. So there's a hoofprint left by that horse. Then a half day's journey away, there is Bumchok, the birthplace of the fourth Shamar Rinpoche. Now Bochok, so that is the ash. This is the place. Now, the place I was just pointing to, but if I point my finger at it, you can't see, right? And then after that, at a place as far as the sound of a conch would carry, I saw the ruins of Tre Kamkimgi Monastery that had been built by Dusum Khenpo but was burned down by the Sakya Lama Chapmusitu Tanakchen. So the Kamkim Monastery in Tre, I will speak about it a little bit more later. So it was a monastery, a Kaju monastery, but it had been built by Dusum Khenpo, but later it was been attacked and burnt down by the Sakya Lama Chapmusitu Tanakchen. And so the author saw the ruins of this monastery. And then after that, following that, I saw the Horse Fence Monastery. And so I'm not certain what this Horse Fence Monastery. Now this is called, so there's a monastery. So it has 3 different levels, they say. I'm not sure with this exact picture. I didn't think so much about the pictures, but at any rate, the main, So I primarily took interest in the text. So there is the horse-faced monster that has 3 monasteries on 3 different levels. And so at that time, there was still debate as to whether it was a Sakya monastery or a Gaji monastery. And so, but it was also still there at the time that the author went. And then, again, the place as far as the sound of conscious carry, there's a place called Rangtak. And so this is here, it says Rangtak, but this is the same as Ratak. And so he said that identifies this as the birthplace of Dresden Kempa. So this is, so Rangtak Zhongzuo is what they call it these days. Then if you face to the west from there, there had been a tower named Sekar that was built by the Tsenhwasa, who was the lord of Ling. So it was a tower that she built. But in later times, the tower collapsed, and its ruins, they built a bunch of broken down old houses on its ruins. So though there was no longer any tower there, it was still called Sekar at that time that the author arrived there. And then if you go to the east from there, to as far as the sound of a conch would carry, there was a stupa in which Dusum Khempa's goatskin coat, that is a coat that had been made out of the skin of a goat, his sling, for carrying rocks, a flint pouch, pots, and so forth, and that had been put in it. And outside of that, there was a 2-story temple. Now, all the murals in the temple had been painted at a later time. And on the path around that, there are footprints of Dusum Khenpa and so forth. And so that Ratzak is that stupa, the Ratzak stupa is still there. It's called the Ratzak or the goatskin coat. So now it is taken care of, or it is owned by Sakya, the Sakya lineage. Then if you go to the uplands of Ratak, so if you go to the top of the valley, there is a cave where Dusum Khenpa practiced Padalhama. I'm not sure what it's called these days. And at that, when he was practicing there, Dusum Khenpa had a vision of Padalhama, and then she dissolved into the rock face. And so Padalhama, there was a self-arisen image of Padalhama that arose when she dissolved. So this is written in great detail. But I'm not able to explain it all today because I don't have time to talk about it. In any case, when I first saw that travelogue, only then did I really feel that it was clear that Dusum Khenpa's birthday is Ratak. Now, these days people say that it's Bochok, but in the old days, people said it was Bumchok. So, because a chupa has like a bumba or a vase. And so I think it must have been some stupa there. But so when you talk about, and anyway, Bumchok is the birthplace of the 4th Shama Rinpoche. So I think this is very clear. But as I said, mentioned earlier, for very reasons, sometimes we confuse the earlier and the later incarnations. We might also mistake who is a Shama and who is a Karmapa. And it is possible that the descendants of Karmapa's family moved They used to be in one place, but then they moved to another. And they went to a different place, but they still say there was a Karmapa born in our family. You can still say that, right? And when you say that, what people don't understand, people, when you say that, then people think, oh, the place where that family is now is where the Karmapa was born. And so it's not impossible that people might think this. So I think it's very important to really establish this definitively. And in particular, if I can get a detailed liberation story of the fourth Shama Rinpoche, then I can really look into it. So generally, we have a lot of oral histories. It's not that I'm ignoring all of these old oral histories, but the primary thing is that if we look at the old histories and research those as well, I think it's be beneficial to use those as well. When I say that this, when I say that this is the birthplace of Dusum Khyentse, I'm not saying that it definitely has to be like that. No, but because of time, that's all I can really say. But I think that in the future, I should do more research and write in detail about the region of Triu, the connections between Triu and the Kagyu lineage, and as well as the birthplaces of the first Karmapa, the ninth Karmapa, the fourth Shama, and so forth. And then I should write a paper about this. And I think that this will fill a blank spot in the history of the Trewa, and so that is my hope. And so I think here is a good place to leave our we'll take our break now, and we will reconvene in 40 minutes.